Good morning. It is February 26, 2020, the day after the Chinese New Year. The Chinese New Year always falls on the first new moon in Aquarius, which this year happened on February 25th. So we are now in the year of the metal rat. A very sociable, very bright, very capable creature to navigate the incredible complexity of what's going on in our world right now. First of all, I'd like to share, my name is Elizabeth DeVries, and I have a website called AngelicMercy44. If you would wish to contact me for a reading or a healing, animal work, communication, mediumship with somebody that has crossed over, or simply to look at my artwork, you can find links to all of my websites there, or you can write me an email at AngelicMercy44@gmail.com. I'd also like to ask that you do subscribe if you like this video, if you like the videos that have been put out so far, and to like on the page and leave your comments. I love reading your comments. It means a lot to me. And I will try to answer all your comments. So before I commence a video, I keep thinking I'm going to do it this day, but I really can't do it until I get to the right day, until it's ready to flood through. And I do a preparation before the video. I do prayers. I light candles on my altar here, as you can see, and I cleanse myself with certain colors and certain prayers, because I wish to be, as much as possible, a conduit for a higher perspective, but also coming directly from my heart, from the depth of my own human experience and way of navigating that has worked for me and might help some of you. The reason for the video today is obviously we're in the throes of the Senate listening to impeachment arguments for and against the removal of our president. And all of us have been watching long interviews and arguments for the Democrats' expression of wishing to have him removed directly from office so that he wouldn't cause more harm. So I listened and watched and digested. I tried to go to the center of my own truth as I absorb what is being revealed to me in front of me through the perspective of each individual person. So the person whose chart I chose to speak about today is Adam Schiff. And we'll get into that right away, but I'd like to say that I also am an admirer and a deeply moved by the Course in Miracles. So before I give a reading or a video, I like to open that book and see what is the correlation with that individual that I'm about to address, and go into the soul of by looking at the chart from a spiritual perspective. So the lesson that I came to today was lesson 37, called My Holiness Blesses the World. It's a wonderful message. This idea contains the first glimmerings, and this applies to all of us, of your true function in the world, or why you are here. And that is exactly what I wanted to talk about Adam Schiff and why I felt he was here. Your purpose is to see the world through your holiness. What a magnificent thought that is, to see the world through your holiness. Thus are you and the world blessed together. No one loses. Nothing is taken away from anyone. Everyone will gain through your holy vision. It signifies the end of sacrifice because it's giving everyone their full due. So it's saying that everyone on this earth has their own individual gift, as we're all aware. I'm not telling you something you don't know, but how to pull forth from our inner being that gift and express it through our own sacred heart. That's how I would put it best. So I got out the chart because I really was, beyond politics, deeply moved by the sacred holiness of Adam Schiff's messaging this week. It went beyond the rules of government to the more deeply embedded ethical perspectives of the soul, of what is right, what is wrong. And he tried to arouse in us a feeling of doing what is right according to our own conscience and our own soul. So I got out his chart. It's a fascinating chart. It's a very, very empathic chart. If I was to choose a chart that would be the antithesis of the chart of our president right now, it would probably be the chart of Adam Schiff. And I'm going to hold it up for you here for you to see. And then I'm going to print it and place it below my post on Facebook so that you can study the chart more deeply. But the biggest thing I wanted to say about the chart is, first of all, he is a Cancer with his sun conjunct Venus in Cancer, and his rising sign, which is what the soul truly is also Cancer. So when you look at the ascendant, you come in with the expression of different sun signs throughout your reincarnations, throughout your many lives in different planes of life. But you are essentially your ascendant. So he is not just a sun in Cancer, conjunct Venus in Cancer, which we'll get into, but he is also Cancer ascendant, which means his personality, his entire persona comes off as the child of the moon, as a maternal influence on our world, a protector of the mother values. And because our country is ruled by Cancer, and his sun and Venus and ascendant are directly close to the sun sign Cancer, which is what our country was, the Declaration of Independence was signed on the 4th of July. So that is right close to Adam Schiff's ascendant, almost conjunct. What that means is, here we have somebody of a deep, deep, compassionate nature who is emotionally moved by the instinct to protect, whether it would be his family, his original family. There's the doggy. Okay, darling, you can come down with me. I thought you might like to come. That's my flower fairy coming down to join us. Whether it would be somebody too that has a highly developed female side as much as the male side. The soul is extraordinarily empathic. the ruler of Cancer is the moon. So immediately one looks, where is his moon? Because that is ruling his ascendant. And his moon is with the sun and with the Venus behind the scenes in his 12th house. His moon is in Gemini. So he's a communicator. So I almost look at this and I think of the pragmatic empath is how I would describe him. The verbal communicator, but because this sun and Venus and moon are all sitting behind the scenes in his 12th house, you would think this is somebody that's extremely private, somebody that would talk about the world or about values or about protectiveness of the Constitution, but he would talk about it without always revealing his own private life. He would be somebody that would share only with his nearest and dearest his deepest personal agonies about life. It would also be somebody that is sitting in the house of Pisces, the sun and Venus, Venus representing our ideals. He's a tremendously compassionate man. It's not a fake compassion. It's not a put on mask of compassion. This is somebody that truly feels the essence of suffering in our world. And with his Pluto sitting in Virgo in the 3rd house of communication, he is highly developed as a communicator and here to bring about tremendous change through his verbal capabilities. And personally, he may have started out when he was young as a very shy, non-communicative child, and as time went by, the Pluto created an enormous, through life experience, transformation within him as he became more and more concerned. Pluto and Virgo are here as the beings to bring about a purification of what's going on. So when they see corruption, that is probably what riles them more than anything else, is the example of corruption in our world. And if you listen to his speeches, he was really, really focused on what was right and ethical and what was corrupt, and leading us to greater indignities and suffering within the country. And because of his compassionate heart, the lack of empathy in our president was probably what would have stirred him the most deeply. The other aspect of this chart that's rather interesting is that he has Mercury in the 1st house in Cancer. So he's got this very intuitive Mercury. He can feel the room when he's talking to a lot of people. He can feel where he should go with his words. And if you watched him, he basically was not reading anything. He was speaking solely from the heart. This was a heart speech with great Virgo tendency of the Pluto coming through to have the details highly defined and in an orderly fashion, but really being pushed from the center of his being, not from the brain. So this was someone that would be speaking more from the wisdom self, from the and having it in the 1st house, it gives the fiery spiritual warrior of Aries impacting the empath of Cancer. So the communication is coming forth very directly with the fire influence Fire signs are very direct in their communication, so it would take away some of the, sometimes Mercury in Cancer can have a capacity to manipulate. It's a kind of not in its strongest place in Cancer. It's driven too much by emotion with its words, but with the Aries coming in behind it, the Mars energy would force it to be clearer, stronger, and more honest, more shooting from the hip. The other thing in his chart that would give him enormous tenacity of purpose, we always look at where does our Mars sit in our chart, because our Mars is our ego, our Mars is our will, our Mars is our sexual energy, our Mars is our capacity to endure, our capacity to stay with something to the bitter end. So people with a weaker Mars flip-flop more. They're less inclined to take something and hold on to it to the very end. They're more likely to abandon the ship. This is definitely not the case here, because he has his Mars in Taurus, which is a tenacious Mars, which is a Mars of, sorry I kept adjusting this, but it keeps slipping a bit today. Sorry about that. Oops, there we go. He has a Mars in Taurus in the house of Aquarius. What that means is he's here to work for the masses, but he's here to use his egoic energy as part of a group, which he is, obviously, but not to give up, never give in. It's like Churchill's old saying, never give in to things great or small, never give in, you know, something to that effect. Probably didn't get that quite right, but he is that man. He will not give in. Even when the world has given up, he will stay to the bitter end. The other thing that's kind of interesting right now is that he has his Saturn in Capricorn, so he's been going through this. Pluto has gone over his Saturn in his house of partnership, so that's also his house of the United States, his partnership house, his agreement with the United States. So he's got his Saturn in there in Capricorn, so it's not surprising to me that he is fighting for the Constitution, because Saturn in Capricorn rules the ethics of the Constitution. And to have his Saturn return at age 60 exactly this year, he's got the Saturn return, and he will be 60 this year. To have that Saturn in Capricorn return, it's his karmic mission. When Saturn return comes, there's something that you realize. And with the second Saturn return, there's some way that you realize at the core of your being that I have a mission I must fulfill now. So age 60, age 59, 60 is a very, very powerful time for all of us. It's a time of reckoning. If we've lived a good life from our first Saturn return 30 years, 29, 30 years earlier, when we come to our second Saturn return, we also concurrently have our Jupiter return. So we could get a blessing with that second Saturn return, which I feel he did. He got the honor to lead his country in the highest and best way that he knows how, in his own individuals, putting his own individual stamp on what he feels is the ethical path. And as I spoke earlier about the purpose to see the world through his own holiness, even people on the Republican side of the aisle in the Senate came up later and in our time of great polarity, this was quite surprising. They came up and congratulated him and said they were moved by his speeches. Not that they would necessarily vote with him or agree with him, but that was really beautiful that they were moved, and Lindsey Graham gave him an accolade for how he had spoken about America. His speeches were the highlight of the Democratic argument, and everyone, I think, would agree with that. So to have that speech, be giving that speech during the time of your Saturn return is powerful. And during the time when he's gone through this Pluto opposition a few years ago to his Sun and Venus, so his ideals were really stirred up. Really, he was woken up, I would say, about 5 to 6 years ago, profoundly, and was never the same after that. So I think if you look back in his record, which I haven't, I'm just looking at it strictly from his chart today in this moment, I think you would find that he is truly begun the essence of the manifestation of his mission about 5 to 6 to 7 years ago. He embarked on that. The other thing that's very beautiful in his chart, he has his Neptune in Scorpio trining his Sun and Venus. So this is this is a holy mission for him. This is somebody that is deeply sensitized to a higher level of living, to a more spiritual expression of being. His heart would be deeply guided by his spirit. So not only has he got all this water operating through the soul, through the heart, but he has the higher levels of spiritual consciousness guiding his conscience, bringing forth a greater expression of his own being. So I feel when he gave those speeches, he may even have surprised himself by the channeling of his own Holy Spirit, his own holiness. And I don't say it in a sanctimonious way, I say it in a way of purity of intention. I feel that was probably the most impactful part of this wonderful man's gifting to us. And I feel it will be something in history that will be preserved, and that when 50, 100 years go by, they will go back to Adam Schiff's speeches, no matter which direction the country goes. And I will be doing some videos on where I think that is going to be. He will have these speeches immortalized. And that's why I chose this wonderful, pragmatic, profound idealist as the topic of conversation today. A man truly of holding in his heart the angelic mercy towards which we all aspire. Thank you for sharing this video with me, for staying with me to the very end. Please do subscribe if it's something that appeals to your soul. And God be with you, and may we all grow today in mercy and in wisdom. Thank you.